with Chuck Schumer, I'm pretty damn dangerous.
Do you have any concern with members of your caucus stumping with Abdul El-Sayed in Michigan, including Senator Bernie Sanders, who's going there this weekend?
Let me say this. First, Donald Trump is in terrible shape, and the Republicans are in Michigan. He looked terrible. Second, Democrats have always come up with candidates that fit their states. We will do that in Michigan. We will beat the Republican, and we will take back the Senate.
So it almost looks as if the Democrat establishment is giving up on Abdul El-Sayed. They didn't say that, but they said it, if you know what I mean by that. Effectively, we have Chuck Schumer slyly admitting that the Democrat Party is actually focusing its attention away from the actual battleground state of Michigan and hoping maybe they can flip Texas or some type of far out dream like that. Because to make a long story short, as we've been trying to tell you, Democrats picked a candidate so insanely unelectable that he's polling worse than any Democrat has in the state of Michigan in the entire 21st century. Keep in mind, this is Michigan. This is formerly a blue wall state. Outside of presidential elections, it's been a very difficult one to crack, but you have him. And while we don't generally rely on polls too much because lately they've been atrocious, I would point out that actually coincides with real election results, which is when I start to care, when I start to take it seriously, because his massive double-digit underperformance in the primary should have told you everything you need to know. And there's a recent Washington Post article trying to detail how insiders in the Democrat Party, Schumer especially, are feeling about this. And while Schumer, once again, like the coward he is trying to get behind El-Sayed, trying to, tacitly give his support because we need to unify with a jihadi communist to win the Senate or something like that. At the same time, they kind of feel like, all right, we're not thinking we're going to do all too great here, which is kind of funny to talk about. How much more funny would it be? Honestly, I hope it doesn't come to this because I hope we do fine in all other regards. But folks, there is a very real possibility, for example, that this guy right here in the nomination of this clown might cost Democrats the Senate, at the very least a Senate seat that's going to be held for the next 6 years in a key battleground state. Anyways, let's talk about it, guys. And I also, at the end of the video, I'm going to address the single worst PR disaster I've ever put out in the history of the channel, which is, of course, Linguini Gate. Never before have I seen something so misunderstood. So we have to address it, okay? We have to address it. Is this me? Is this my yearbook photo? What's going on? What is the origin of this? We'll talk about it, guys. First, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Greatly appreciate the support. And with all of that said, so you can see right here, on one hand, the DSA thinks they're electable, and they claim that the Democrat establishment will ultimately come around or something like that. But frankly, it doesn't matter if Chuck Schumer says he endorses El-Sayed. Chuck Schumer's not a voter in the state of Michigan. I think the real question is whether the nearly 50% of Democrat voters for Haley Stevens, the establishment candidate in Michigan, many of whom we showed you, are not enthusiastic about voting El-Sayed. Some are saying they're going to boycott. Some are saying to vote Republican altogether. This is a battleground state that matters. How many of them are going to break off? Let's even say you lose 20 to 30%. Okay. You also pointed out that socialism polls underwater by double digits among independent voters. And yes, this is Michigan. The math is not adding up. El-Sayed's presenting very little evidence he can run up the margins even among, say, black voters in inner cities, which matter in Michigan outside of just college towns, right? Working class voters, this is Michigan. He's not popular among the unions. What's going on here? Well, Chuck Schumer is now trying to make the excuse that Democrats don't necessarily need to win Michigan to flip control of the U.S. Senate. Oh, well, we don't need him. We can win somewhere else. To which I say, technically, yes. But it's very unlikely for a reason I'll explain in a second. Very likely you will need El-Sayed if you're going to win the Senate. And let's not get complacent, obviously. Everyone has to go out and vote, but the odds are not in his favor. I'll put it that way. But here's the full quotation, folks. A path to winning back the Senate clearly goes through Michigan, which is true. But we have a whole bunch of different paths, Schumer said. And we'll examine those paths in a second because, frankly, they don't make a lot of sense because, you would think basically in order to win the other states, you would need some type of monumental, historic 2008 style blue wave. But you'd also think if that happens, wouldn't Al-Sayed likely also win in that scenario? Probably, we would think, right? It just the national, there is such a thing as a national environment in an election, and to me, it doesn't really equate that. For example, Democrats would win Texas but lose Michigan. I mean, theoretically, I guess it's possible, but I have my questions there. Anyways, though, if you want the latest updates on the totally not fake, totally not kayfabe Democrat civil war that's definitely happening, as we often sort of ridicule. Take a listen to this right here. So this Washington Post article details on one hand how a lot of Jewish voters in Michigan, who, Jewish voters are typically a Democrat voting bloc in the United States, are not really down to vote for him for obvious reasons. Schumer, of course, is Jewish. Well, here's what it says about that. Quote, "The race has put Schumer in a tough position. On one hand, he has called out those on the left who are, quote, too complacent or forgiving about those who exhibit anti-Semitism within their ranks. On the other, he often describes Democrats as being a big tent party, capacious enough to include Senator John Fetterman, an ardent defender of Israel, as well as the country's critics. Al-Sayed's public criticism of Schumer, who he suggested during the primary that he did not want to see remain as the Democrat leader in the Senate, has not made it easier, which, by the way, this is another case of, you could almost argue, the DSA getting too big of a head and way too ahead of themselves, because I totally understand why they would want to replace Schumer, for example. On the other hand, you do understand that, for example, if you win the Democrat nomination, you're going to need his support. You're going to need his money. So maybe, and you're already going to be struggling in that regard. So maybe just play the game for a little bit. But of course, he will not do that. But has not made it easier. Quote, "If you're Chuck Schumer, I'm pretty damn dangerous," Al-Sayed had said last month. Al-Sayed's campaign, interestingly, declined a interview request, even though this is from the Washington Post. But, what's interesting, and maybe why Al-Sayed feels like he doesn't need to actually endorse Schumer, is because Schumer in himself is such a pushover. He is so weak. He is so supportive of his own demise, effectively, that he still, at least verbally, despite kind of throwing a little bit of shade there, has come out and ultimately said he's going to endorse Al-Sayed. Quote, "Though Senator Schumer and I may have deep disagreement on a number of issues, we both understand how critical it is to win Michigan and defeat Mike Rogers," Al-Sayed said in a statement to the Post. "I appreciate his pragmatism," he said in response to Schumer ultimately giving him the endorsement. So there you have that. So, and Schumer's excuse, again, is what, folks? Well, maybe we don't need Michigan. That's not really necessarily true, because if you know anything already about the Senate map this year, it is not favorable for Democrats to begin with. And so I've taken the luxury of kind of filling out some of this map for you on 270 to win. So, for example, if we are to say Michigan goes Republican and all the likely Republican states remain so, and we'll leave the swing states out for a moment, right? Here's the issue that Democrats are going to face. So if we get Michigan, that is already 50 Republican seats, which, by the way, would stand as a Republican majority given the vice president +1, right? So that is to say, even if Democrats win in Maine, which is a swing state, right, that on the Senate level, at least, that is a competitive race. But let's say they win in Maine, they win in New Hampshire, they sweep and win in North Carolina and Georgia. Look at the math here. That still only gives them 48 Senate seats. And so basically, in order to win without Michigan, Democrats would have to, let's say, win Ohio, which has not gone blue in quite a while. And, every year Democrats think it's going to be competitive. In the end, it's really not. But let's say they win in Ohio. Okay, you still only have 49. So you're seeing the math here, right? Let's say Alaska goes red or whatever. Democrats would have to flip a state like, say, Iowa, right? Texas or Alaska. Without Michigan, that is the type of math you're looking at. It's not the most likely. Let me put it that way. And by the way, even if you flip one, let's say by some disaster, Talafrico ends up winning in Texas. Okay, fine. Let's give that to Talafrico. Democrats still only have 50. They would need 51 with the president being a Republican to hold the Senate, right? So that's to say, even if Talafrico somehow came across, or Democrats win in Iowa, or by the way, Alaska's ranked choice voting nonsense hands them a Democrat Senate seat, notice how still they'd have to win another Republican state, either somewhere like, again, Nebraska, Iowa, Kansas, Texas, Florida, right? Nowhere really where their chances would be all that great. And so, yes, indeed, it is true if Democrats are going to have any chance at winning the Senate. And by the way, I hope it doesn't come down to Michigan. I want us to have a much better performance than that, okay? Because, for example, we win in Ohio, and, you know, ideally, let's say maybe we pull off Maine, maybe we pull off Georgia or North Carolina or something, but let's even say we don't, right? Even just win in Ohio, take all the states we're supposed to take. That's 52, okay? So, yes, or by the way, even 51 if somehow Michigan went blue without all those places. So yes, to put a long story short, right? Yes, indeed, Chuck Schumer, you do need to win Michigan. And well, the fact that they're kind of already admitting to extend a little bit of surrender on that tells you a lot about what you need to know here. But that said, again, you have to say it a million times. It's not an excuse to get complacent, okay? Because obviously you can't trust polls. You can't trust prediction markets. Those things have been all over the place this cycle. We can draw some conclusions from the actual primary results, which is really the core reason why I have optimism. But still, that was last month. The election's in November. A lot can change. We got to show up to vote. It's that simple, okay? And so the real message I give for this midterms, and especially given how all over the place polling, for example, has been, is listen to nothing and no one. Just go vote, right? And this is a rule for any election, but especially one like this, where the polling is a disaster. By the way, did you guys see Karen Bass got busted for a fake poll? Basically, her campaign was promoting a poll that wasn't even real, okay? And it's this whole scandal with the pollster. But just to give you an idea, that's the type of nonsense that's been happening, right? So you cannot believe any of this stuff. To make a long story short, if they tell you you're up by 20 points, go vote. If they tell you you're down by 20 points, go vote, especially in this election, because look at Francesca Hong's primary. She was up by an average of 24 points. Was that real, right? Obviously not. So, that is simply the situation. But hey, again, just based on the primary results alone, based on the fact, let's use our common sense. We have an Islamic communist trying to run in a swing state. This might not go over well. It's not looking good ultimately there for Chuck Schumer. So there's that story. Before we close, let me just address this, okay? Because today I was scrolling on Instagram. I found this meme, okay? It says, he must be half Chinese and half Italian. And you can see this guy right here. His name is Linguini, which I was like, that's hilarious. I'm going to go post this, okay? Because as someone who is part Italian and part Asian, I'm not Chinese, but that actually makes it funnier. This is me. This is literally me right here. Okay, I'm Linguini. That's actually my real name, is Linguini. But no, in all seriousness. So I posted this, right? And I did the thing. I was like, please stop making memes out of my high school yearbook photo. I don't know where you guys even found this, but I don't appreciate it. Okay, me thinking I did the funniest thing ever, and everyone would, I hate to explain the joke, but everyone would get the joke, right? They'd get the sarcasm. Half of the comment section, okay? This is actually hilarious. Half the comment section thinks that's me, okay? They're actually saying, what do you mean? You look good in this picture. That's not me. That's not me. Which, maybe if we're being 5D about this, if we're thinking on 150 IQ levels, in a sense, maybe they did get the joke because, we all look the same, right? I'm Asian, he's Asian. I guess we kind of have similar facial features, but, maybe on a subconscious, on a plane that we a 5D plane they didn't understand. We don't understand. The joke actually did land in some way, right? But that's actually so a bunch of people think that's me. To be clear, this is not my yearbook photo. But so I had that, and then I had the other half who thought that this was a real thing and people were making memes out of this about me. And so there are a bunch of people saying, oh, bro, just take the joke. You got to embrace it, bro. Some people got mad because they thought leftists were making this. And I was like, okay, listen. With all due respect to the fan base, You guys were not funny or creative enough to come up with this. It was me, okay? It's my joke. It was you guys don't get to take credit for it, okay? So you want to play off of it? You want to make more? Free to do so. But just to be clear, it was me who made the self-deprecating joke. Have you heard the humor we make on this channel? Okay, you think I'd be offended about linguini? No. Okay, I thought it was freaking hilarious. Just to clarify, I'm not offended by it. That's why I posted it. And I apparently no one got it. No one got it. Okay, this is the worst translation job we've ever seen in our lives. You know, it is easier apparently to go to Asia and understand what people are saying than it is this. So there you have it. But you know, that said, we might as well play off of it. Okay, we have merch coming soon. Got a lot of designs. I'm designing. We're in the process, right? It's been a long thing to do, but we're doing it. But maybe we need a Ring Greeny shirt, huh? Ah, Ring Greeny. Ah, you know, like Ring Greeny. So sad for you. But anyways, there you have it, guys. That said, let me know your thoughts on this in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on this video. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Until next time, God bless and peace.